Okay, so I have some Black Scholes code here. It's relatively simple code. It's code that I obtained from Develop the website. This was a portal that Fabrice Roy had set up, and it doesn't seem to be active any longer. I'm going to leave a link on a OneDrive, and that you'll find in a hyperlink below the actual video here that I'm going to set out for YouTube. But first thing I'm going to do here is just check that the code actually works. And I go into an online compiler, and the online compiler here, there's a few things missing. In this particular code I had here, there's no dividend, for instance. And when we look at the D1, there's no term here included for Q. So I'm going to come out of that, just going to delete that out, and I'm going to start from scratch. So basically I went into an online compiler and I've said new project, and I've set the setting. There's different settings here. Could have Python or Perl or Ruby, any of these languages, but the one we're using here is just basically C++. And I'll paste in, and sometimes the format is retained and sometimes not. Here the format of the original code is maintained, and that's handy because we have the bracketing here aligned. Okay, so when we open the bracket, the equivalent bracket when it closes off is aligned, and that's useful to try and observe which bracket is which. Okay, so we're taking Black Scholes model, and I'm going to start off here with these basic values of the stock price is 100, the exercise on the contract is 100, the maturity is 1 year, the risk-free rate 5%, no dividend yield, right? So we can include in here dividend yield. So just for the moment I'm not going to include a positive value, but I include the term in, so afterwards we can observe effects of changing dividend. And then we have volatility, and we have to state is the option a call or a put. So up here we have as usual a D1, and this D1 term here is our familiar. It's obtained by taking above the line the logarithm of the ratio S divided by K, and then we have R negative Q plus the standard deviation. So it's the annualized standard deviation of the return, and it's squared, and we're dividing by 2, and then underneath the line we have the volatility multiplied by the square root of t. Okay, so that's the standard term included to estimate the D1 in Black Scholes. Nothing unusual there. To estimate the put, we just basically appeal to put call parity. Right, so we don't have a D1 or D2, but this will yield the right value for the put term. So if we say C, we get a call, otherwise it's a put. And if I put C here, the value that I generate is a call. So if I run this code, it should execute okay without any difficulty. And I know that the true value for the European call option is 1045, and that's what I obtain here. Okay, so that's relatively straightforward to do. Now we could demonstrate that. A couple of things I want to do. The first thing is I want to take that code and I want to just set up a new instance of that in Visual Studio. Okay, so and just run through a couple of steps in terms of running that estimation if we have Visual Studio 2017. Okay, so the latest version of Visual Studio is 2017, and we can say new project, and then we can go into Windows desktop. Okay, this is different from before, and then Windows desktop wizard, and we give the name I'm going to call it Black Scholes 3. And hopefully it doesn't conflict with an existing Black Scholes. I've done a few of these. And then I just want to make sure that the project is empty. I'm going to click OK. and then we take a look at, basically there's no header files here that we need to invoke. So we'll create a new file, add a new file here, and we can just say the default here will be source, and we can leave that. That won't prejudice anything. So we just add, and then if you like, we get a blank canvas, and we should be able to paste in the code that I a moment ago copied. And again, the same setup. This is Volupta code, and I will leave a link here to this code on the Volupta website, on the YouTube, just below the YouTube video. So if we run here, we should get the same value at 1045.06. Okay, and doesn't seem to be any major issues. That value seems to appear. Again, nothing different. The code here is exactly the same as before, and we have the same parameter inputs as the values here that we tested in the online compiler, and we're getting 1045 as well. Now, so these values work, and obviously the code seems to be functional, and the 1045 corresponds to a true value. That is easy to verify. So I know that the code is working here. I'd like to take one step further. I'd like to take this code and set it up as perhaps in a way similar to what we might have seen with user forms. User forms in Excel provide kind of a Windows interface or a dialog box which allows you to just input these parameter values into boxes, click a box, and then obtain the 1045 or whatever the value of the put option is. Okay, so just to observe that, then I'm going to go back in and create a new instance of Visual Studio. So I'm opening up a brand new Visual Studio. I'm going to create a brand new project. So File, New Project, and then I'm going to select, before I was using the Windows Universal, and so here I'm going to use MFC, and the MFC is a way of taking the native C++ code and then allowing the C++ code to be invoked using a dialog box. So I'm going to say MFC, I'm going to say Black Scholes, so just to give it a name, Black Scholes and 4, and I'm going to hit OK, right, and that's going to save in the browser here is again in Documents and then Visual Studio Projects. Okay, so that should appear there. So a couple of things I need to do here. First of all, I want to tick on dialog based. Then I need to untick security development because this is just a once-off program, and it's going to be a very simple program, so I don't need to constantly update anything. And then the simplest way of setting out the executable file is not to have it linked to a DLL, and instead we'll just use a static library. Okay, and then I'll just go next, and then next again, next, next, and then finish. Okay, so the project has been set up, and what's going to emerge is just basically a blank project that we can add our code to. So a couple of things we need here are to see where the dialog box is, and it should be one of these. So I think it's the second one here, and we have basically basically a blank canvas, and I want to add controls in here. So I want to put in an set of edit control buttons here where I can add the text and basically add it in boxes where I can input the parameters, the S, the K, the R, the Q, the T, the volatility, and then click a button, and then in the edit control have an output box where the 1045 would appear, And I also need a few labels, so that's handy for memorizing what's going on. Again, what are the parameters? Well, we need an S, a K, a T, an R, a Q, and a V. And what we might do is actually just estimate, keep it simple, and just estimate the call. And we don't have to put in the value for the put. Okay, so to see that then in action, let's go back into the MFC. I think it's the last one here. It's this one. Right, so I want to drag across static text. So if you like S, K, R, SKT, R, Q, and V. Okay, now they're a little bit out of line with each other, and I can probably fix that up a bit using these options here. And I may be able to get some kind of sensible alignment. Now it's still a bit out of line, so we might take these three and drag up a little bit more closely. And we can take out the to-do dialog. That has no effect here. So I'll try to square everything off and get everything evenly sorted. So we'll try that again. Right, and it evens out a bit. And then using this then as a, okay, so maybe I'll add in the terms here. So we need to put in for these ones the caption. What is it? What are the parameters? So it's capital K, capital T. So I'll just put T, capital. So this one should be K. So I just correct that, and then we can go T, the maturity of the European option. And Black Scholes has been used to value this option. So that's T, the maturity. And then we have R. Right. And we have Q. Same again. So now I'm just changing, if you like, using the properties here, Q. And then the static, the last one is V, the volatility. So we call that V. Now, if this didn't appear, how would I get it to appear? If I need to find the properties, I just go to, I think it's View. So View, and then the last one, Properties window. Okay, and it appears here. And if I just highlight S here, we can see that the caption is S. Okay, the next thing I need to do then is to take where am I inputting my values? And we need to enter those actual values for the parameters, and we need to edit control. So we'll put a box here, and again I'll keep it simple. Edit control, I'll just drag it across, holding down right click or left click and hold down the mouse, and then edit control. And this is not very aesthetic. I need to probably realign everything. I'll try a little bit harder, and then do it again, and maybe just try it this way. Okay, so are they aligned? Fairly aligned, maybe a bit out of kilter with each other. So I'll take these three and drag down a bit. Okay, so they look as if, okay, they're aligned. Now it's not perfectly aligned, we don't need to, we just need to demonstrate something fairly simple. And then I want to put in a button, and the button has to do something. The button has to say estimate the Black Scholes call. And then where would the value of the Black Scholes call appear? Well, we need an output, place where the 1045 has to appear. And it might be no harm to use a static text. And so I've run out of time here on this video, so in the next video I'll just continue on setting this out.